Hello, this is Brian James Shanley, and you are listening to episode number 3 of my video blog, which is entitled Brian James Shanley Raw, on which I speak the truth about the issues of the day from the perspective of a student of Western philosophy, history, theology, etc. And I tell the truth in an unrestrained manner. There is no filter. I don't care whose feelings get hurt. I don't care whose sacred cow gets slaughtered. I might even resort to profanity on occasion if something upsets me enough. All I care about is that the truth is spoken about the things that confront this particular generation as I sit here right now in 2017. As I said, this is episode number 3, and the subject matter that I want to cover, that everyone's been asking me about, because I've been hinting at it for the last 2 episodes, is a subject in our culture right now, which is called alternative facts. First of all, what is it? How many times have you been in a verbal conversation or on one of those social media discussion chains, and as you're sitting there in a free open marketplace of ideas, which is a Western concept, the freedom to speak and listen to other people and try to convince other people to hold to your position. As you're doing that, eventually you run into someone who's a political leftist, and when they're out of preconceived pat talking points that the television taught them, they resort to saying, well, you're a Republican, so you believe in alternative facts. Or, you're a Trump supporter, you voted for Trump, therefore you believe in alternative facts. They never define the word, and it's a principle in literature, and it can be used in other things, that if someone uses a particular phrase but never defines it or tells you what it means, they're under the assumption that their intended audience already knows it. Okay, so if I discuss the Super Bowl, but I don't go out of my way to define the game of football, American style, and things like that, I'm assuming that I don't have to because my intended audience already knows. So right away, they're assuming they want to be granted for free that this concept exists and that it exists in the manner in which they think it does. Okay? But they say it with absolute authority, and you could almost put an exclamation point on the end of their sentence. They say it as though they've just proven some kind of point, as though it's the showstopper, it's the blockbuster, it's the smoking gun that ends all discussion. At least it's supposed to in their world, because they surround themselves with other people. Their intended audience is other people who think like them. People who don't like Western civilization, they don't like America, they don't like the principles upon which the country was founded. They have self-hatred problems against themselves for being born here, and they feel the need to apologize to the rest of the world. I'm sorry I've had it so good. And so they're angry at themselves, and sometimes it manifests itself in the way they talk about this country and, like I said, the foundational principles. But essentially, when you're a pothead and you've been smoking drugs, especially prior to the age of 25, which are developmental years for your brain, you eventually produce an adult that couldn't think their way out of a wet paper bag. So to them, the definition of scholarship and intelligence and research is totally different than a normal person. And I know the shadow on my face is actually shadow produced by the fact that I'm holding the phone. All right, so I know it's ghetto style, but just work with me. All right. Anyways, so here's the deal. In English grammar, one word can carry multiple definitions, and that definition depends on the context in which you're using it. The classic example is the word bark. Okay? You take the word bark. Depending on the sentence in which it's used and the intent of the speaker, the word can mean the sound that a dog makes. It could mean the outer layer on the wood of a tree. It can mean a slang term where someone is giving you orders and commands or yelling at you and they're barking at you. All right, so how is the word meant to be understood? It depends on the other words contained in the sentence in which it's being used and the other sentences in the paragraph and the flow of thought. All right? I've already gotten to a place where Joe Schmo the pothead, who has his pornography in this hand and his fantasy football in this hand, who watches Game of Thrones or whatever, and that's the highlight of his week. I've already went too deep for him, and he's gone. He's shut this thing off. So if you're still listening, pretty good. But alternative, in the context in which it was originally used, first of all, the historical setting. How did the word come into the popular jargon? You have to go back to the inauguration of Donald Trump. All right. You got to understand it, to the leftist, to the Marxist, the socialist, the communist. The inauguration of Barack Hussein Obama in 2009 in January, that was the temporal junction point of the entire space-time continuum to people who have a one-world socialist, one-world pan-Leninist, multiculturalist, we are the world concept, or a totalitarian, globalist, statist concept of how reality should be. Barack Hussein Obama's inauguration was the moment of all of history, and it cannot possibly be eclipsed, ever. Maybe instead of inaugurating a light-skinned, half black and half white guy who holds to left-of-center views, maybe the inauguration of a woman was going to be the biggest deal. But when the people go to the ballot box and say, hey, we don't hate our country, we don't want our country to be absorbed into a one-world, multiculturalist, dictatorial, tyrannical, technocratic rulership, we want it to be an independent, sovereign nation state that doesn't need to go to some other organization for instruction as to what we can and cannot do. We are free people. You're talking to free people when you're talking to an American. When they voted at the ballot box for the non-politician who was going to put America first, to people who had a different agenda than that, it pissed them off. It made them angry. They thought that we had moved past nationalism, past liking America, past liking the people over and against the financiers and the big labor and the Wall Street and things like that. They thought that we were going to be give away our sovereignty as a nation state, and we are the world, and there will be no borders, and everything will be fine until the wrong globalist dictator comes, and then there's hell to pay, and there's no response that can possibly be given because the citizenry globally has been disarmed. All right, so as they're inaugurating Donald Trump, they went from throwing everything but the kitchen sink at candidate Donald Trump as he's trying to get the Republican nomination. You had a Republican Party that was ready to do its self-harm, all right? That was ready to throw the election, that was ready to disenfranchise its own voters and to disrupt its own convention rather than let a non-politician who was not a Reagan-era type of neocon, warmongering type of guy of the establishment, all right? They were willing to broker their own convention. That's how, but the mainstream media, who's left of center, was even worse and more violent to him, okay? So as it turned out that they're blasted by surprise because they had all these fake polls. Trump wasn't supposed to win the election, but he did. And so what happens then is the media goes from we got to stop him from getting elected to we've got to have a recount, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, we've got to accuse him of colluding with some other country, which they're still keeping alive to this day, mind you, over and against the evidence against such a thing, because the only other alternative is to accept the fact that the voters wanted a leader that was going to keep us nationally and economically safe, which hasn't been done for a long time in this country. They can't stand that the people spoke such a thing. How dare they? How dare they have a Brexit, the United States of America breaking away from what's taking place on the rest of the planet. So globalist people are angry. The corporations that own the mainstream media are angry. And the next message they send is one in which, well, if we can't stop him from taking office, maybe we can minimize its importance. Maybe we can make it sound like crap. And so what they did was on his inauguration day, keep on looking. Anyways, during his inauguration, what they decided to do was take a photograph. This is the same mainstream media, mind you, that during the Trayvon Martin stuff tried to make George Zimmerman, who was Hispanic, into a white guy and spliced the 911 tape to make him say things he didn't say so they could foster a race-based riot in Florida that never happened. Thank God the people in Florida were smart enough not to be sucked into this. But these people are willing to lie, this media, right? And so what they did was they took a photograph of the crowd at 8 a.m. People were still filing in. Not everyone was there yet. And then they passed this 8 a.m. picture off as though that was the crowd size during the actual inauguration speech. Thus, as Trump said, hey, this was a large inauguration, they showed this 8 a.m. picture where nobody was there, said, you're a liar, and they were trying to mock him. And so then Donald Trump has a new press secretary, if you will, who handles relations with the mainstream media, who I wouldn't give these mainstream media people the time of day, but Trump was doing it as a service, trying to put his best foot forward and have a decent relationship with the media. A gentleman by the name of Sean Spicer comes out and to the best of his ability against a hostile room who's under orders and who's being paid to basically come against and assassinate the character and try to stop him from getting anything done whatsoever. In the most hostile, disgusting, and dishonest manner possible. Sean Spicer's providing responses left and right, trying to correct the record, because these people are lying about the crowd size of the inauguration. They're screwing with them on day one. Okay? So then, later on, some jackass by the name of Chuck Todd on MSNBC, he interviews Kellyanne Conway. And I don't know if Kellyanne Conway was with the Witness Protection Program and wanted to go to a place where no one would ever see her. That's the only way you'd go on a Chuck Todd show, because not only is he too stupid to be breathing, but nobody watches the thing. All right, ratings are at an all-time low. So she goes on, and he's not doing an interview. He's an attack dog. If you watch it, he's not asking questions. He's putting forth declarative statements. He's literally trying to talk, right? And she responds by saying, look, Sean Spicer put forth alternative facts, all right? And, no, I don't smoke. I don't smoke. Don't let the fact that I'm on the telephone stop you. Crap. All right, anyways, so basically he's got her under cross-examination and questioning her like a pit bull, and she's providing rational answers and being the nicest person possible, and he's being a bastard. You can watch it if you want. Chuck Todd is an idiot, and the fact that he has a job at all is quite remarkable. All right, that's an act of charity. He's drawing a paycheck, and he couldn't. I can't even tell you. He's just too stupid. But anyway, so she's being gracious and nice. And he says, why would you put Sean Spicer in such a position to defend a lie? The question, of course, has presuppositions behind it. It's like saying, hey, what color tennis shoes were you wearing when you robbed the bank? Well, hold on. Before we discuss my tennis shoes, let's back up to the presupposition behind the question, and let's ask whether or not I robbed the bank. Because if I did not rob the bank, then the question of what color my shoes were cannot possibly exist. So a question whose existence is dependent on a presupposition it's a rigged game. You can't answer it. You can't even acknowledge its existence. And so she's doing the best she can. And finally she says, look, he simply furnished the media with alternative facts. Now, to the leftist who hates the United States and everything the United States stands for, their idea of alternative, as they've defined the word, is, well, alternative means if the sky is blue, you're offering an alternative that the sky is really red. If 1 + 1 = 2, you're offering an alternative that 1 + 1 is really 11. They think an alternative literally means that the truth is X, but you're saying Y, and you're simply presenting it as an alternative. You're literally lying. So they say it. They say, well, you are like the country, therefore you're obviously a liar. That's the character assassination. And yes, you have to be stupid to follow such a line, but you got to understand that their target audience is red diaper doper babies. All right, Joe Schmo public who you know, the average person who can think and who, they're not going to fall for such a thing. But the word alternative, you got to understand it. Let's say I like rap music, okay? There's a kind of rap music that is on the mainstream radio, okay? The corporations that own the record labels, they've allowed a certain kind of music to become mainstream, to see the light of day, okay? And they literally force it down your throat. So if there are 1,000 options, they'll play you 20. Okay, so then there becomes an alternative, which is an underground, which simply means outside of the 20, okay, we're going to play some other ones. All right, the fact that they're playing things outside of what the mainstream corporate record label is playing doesn't mean that they're any less valid or good. Okay, it simply means that they're putting forth something that's alternative, different. Okay, so if a subject matter is being covered by the mainstream media, by the news, and let's say there are 20 different facts that could be covered, but they're literally covering 5 and they're doing it very slanted, they're ignoring 15. Okay, so if you bring out the other 15, you're providing by definition alternative facts. Facts that come from outside of what the normative mainstream media is covering. If you fail to grasp the logic, then I can't help you short of recommending a great counselor, a great tutor, something like that, so you can actually learn how to think, and perhaps a great treatment program so you can get off the drugs, and maybe your brain will return to somewhat usefulness. But if you can't grasp that, I don't know how to say it. Basically, if a subject is a foot long and the mainstream media is covering 1 inch of it, you're simply going to the other 11 inches of the subject and talking outside of the talking points. Okay, outside of the predetermined, we're only going to cover these in this circle. You're outside of the circle. You're out of the box. That's what alternative facts are. All right, so if someone says, hey, XYZ happened, and they're covering this, this, and this, and they're deliberately ignoring things that contradict their narrative or what they want the public to believe to be true about the event, and I bring up those things that they've ignored, I'm not lying. I'm simply shining light on the things that they're choosing to ignore or pretend doesn't exist. And by the way, if you're willing to pretend certain facts don't exist in order to cover an event, in order to shape the public's opinion of a certain event, that's dishonest, that's crooked, and you have to look beyond Joe Schmo, who has the mic in his hand in front of the camera, to the people that pay him, and find out what the hell they have to gain by making sure that you believe a certain position. Okay, so when she said, I'm bringing up alternative facts, what she said is, hey, I'm bringing up points that the media is not covering. I hope that clears up the situation. So when you say alternative facts, yes, I believe in alternative facts. I believe that if they're talking about a bank robbery, and they leave out the fact that the guy was a jihadist or whatever, and I cover the fact that he's a jihadist, it's an alternative fact. It's a fact that they have chosen to ignore. They've chosen to believe doesn't exist. They've chosen to make you think doesn't exist. All right? They've chosen to bury. I bring up the facts that they choose to bury. That doesn't make you a liar. It makes them a liar, because of the fact that you have to bring up the alternative facts. If they cared about journalism, there would be no alternative facts, because there would be nothing left out to begin with. Okay, so we've discussed alternative facts. We've demythologized the term, and we've also discovered why it's necessary to include alternative facts in your conversations. Okay, and aesthetically, where am I standing right now? I'm in the middle of a subsidized apartment project. Why? Because just behind me, on this corner in the second floor, I remember that very window on the second floor in 1978, 1979. Picture an itty-bitty little blonde-haired, brown-haired boy with itty-bitty little blue eyes in a diaper, on his tippy toes, hoping to look out this window to see the world outside of the apartment. Okay? That was me. 1978, 1979. I come from this Susie Shanley's little boy, okay, from the red brick apartment, subsidized, income-based project who wasn't supposed to be anything stands in front of you right now, defending with all authority of God Western civilization and the Christian worldview that gave birth to it, and the God who revealed it to humankind. And that kind of upward mobility where you can come from this and actually make a contribution to try to make the world a better place is only possible inside of a constitution-based representative republic composed of free people who have the ability to develop their gifts and their talents and pursue them in an open marketplace, both of ideas and of business. And so I've been able to do that, and I'm willing to defend those concepts. I'm not going to do it in the military. I'm not going to do it in the police force. I'm going to do it in the rhetorical war. I don't know if you understand this, but the United States of America is in a civil war. Right now it's a cold civil war. One day it'll develop probably into a hot civil war on your streets. Your grandchildren will probably be fighting in it. Okay? And the Civil War has begun. And that's why my guy Alex Jones, in the 1990s, when he was making his organization of alternative media, bringing up things the media won't cover, hope that makes sense to people, he decided of all the things he could call it, he called it information wars. Right now, it's the information war, if you will. And in this war of words, in the war of rhetoric, I've chosen to be on the correct side. And here's hoping that something was said that caused a light to go on in your mind, and in your heart, and in your conscience, and in your intellect. And I will see you on the next episode of Brian James Shanley Raw. There's the window I came from as a little toddler in diapers. Now I stand before you as a grown man. All right, I'll talk to you later.